Hey everyone, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha and today I'm going to be giving you some middle grade graphic novel recommendations. It has been a long time since I have given any middle grade graphic novel recommendations. I think when I first started my channel, I did a really long video where I talked about some graphic novel recommendations that had some middle grade, some young adult, and some adult. But today I just want to focus on middle grade ones because I feel like those tend to be the ones that are my favorites. So I'm going to share mostly newer ones, but I'm also going to make sure I mention some that were not in the first video, just because they may have been mentioned somewhere else before on my channel, but this is just graphic novels, so I want to make sure to mention them here as well. Also, middle grade March is going to be coming up fairly soon, so I thought I would go ahead and get a little bit of a jump start on recommending books that are middle grade. And because in my recommendations video for that, I'll mostly be talking about just like regular novels, I wanted to make a special video for graphic novels. Let's just go ahead and get started with the physical books that I have. And the first one is going to be Roller Girl by Victoria Jamieson. Now, it has been a while since I read this one, but I will tell you that it was one of my favorite graphic novels that I've ever read. I just wish that I could remember it a little bit better right now for you so I could explain it a little better, but I definitely need to give this one a reread. This is a Newbery Honor book, which ought to tell you something, but this is about 12-year-old Astrid, and she has always done everything with her best friend Nicole. But she has decided now to try out for roller derby, and she expects Nicole to do that with her, but Nicole wants to try out for like this dance academy. So this is the first time they have kind of expressed different interest in like things that they do together. So Nicole has a new best friend and Astrid is kind of having trouble coming to terms with that. She's struggling with her like experience with roller derby, but it's kind of like a coming of age story. She kind of comes into her own throughout this experience and finds out that you don't have to share the same interests with your friends to be friends with them. You can still be friends despite all of that, and just kind of like being comfortable with yourself and growing and maturing. And it's just, it's such a good story. Like I said, I wish I could remember more details, but I love the art style with this. And I think Victoria Jamieson is a great writer and illustrator, so I definitely think you should check this one out if you haven't already. I thought it was really interesting to learn about roller derby because I hadn't really heard about anything regarding roller derby before. Like, I knew of it, but I didn't know the details of how it was played, and I think it's super interesting and also really hardcore. I really just felt like I could relate with Astrid's character because as you grow older and as you like start to differ from your friends, you wonder if you can make this work. And I think just her insecurities and, like I said, coming into her own was very relatable for me, and I could see a lot of my childhood self in Astrid, and so I thought this was a really good story. I gave it 5 stars, and I would absolutely recommend you picking this one up. The next graphic novel that I have is Garlic and the Vampire by Bree Paulson. I just read this book last fall and I fell in love with it. It was so cute and just whimsical and adorable and cozy. It's kind of like, to me, a little bit of like a cottagecore vibe as well. But it follows our main character, Garlic, and you've got this garden of all these vegetables who have been brought to life by Witch Agnes, and she kind of takes care of them. There's only one aspect of this that's kind of like, and it's that there are these vegetables that are gardening other vegetables and like selling vegetables. It's kind of like cannibalistic seeming, but if you just disregard that, this is such a sweet story. Garlic is me. Like, Garlic is very like timid and insecure. She wants to be nice and safe in her garden, just like tending the garden. She doesn't want to really adventure out and explore, which I wouldn't say that I don't want to do that, but I can sense the whole like anxiety with Garlic, and I'm like, I can relate. And Carrot and Witch Agnes are very encouraging to Garlic, but she's just still kind of wanting to stay in her safe space. But then the vegetables in the garden learn about this potential threat. It's this bloodthirsty vampire that may have moved in a nearby castle. And so, of course, Garlic has to be the one to go investigate because Garlic deters vampires, right? So Garlic is tasked with going to the vampire's castle and trying to get rid of him, and this just ends up being such a whimsical, sweet story, and I love the message behind it. I love Garlic's character and the evolution of Garlic. It is a very short book, but I absolutely love this one. I gave it 5 stars, and I definitely want to reread it again in the future. Another book on my list is Guts by Raina Telgemeier. Raina Telgemeier's books are some of my favorites, especially Guts, and she writes autobiographically, which means all of these are based off of true stories and based off of her own life. So she is the main character in these books, and this is the third in a series. Smile is the first one, Sisters is the second, and there's Guts, but you don't have to read them in order or all, I don't think at all, together. I did read the other two, but I feel like they could stand alone as well. This is by far one of the most relatable graphic novels I have ever read. So it follows Raina, and she is having stomach issues, and she tries to brush it off as just having the stomach bug, but she starts to notice that every time she worries about food or worries about school or worries about friendships, that's when her tummy gets really upset. And so it's kind of showing this connection between having really bad anxiety and worries and how that connects with your physical health as well. And I felt like this was so relatable. This is just something that I wish I would have had as a kid. It would have made so much more sense to me as a kid, just realizing what was going on with my body and times that I had an upset stomach due to anxiety. So this was such a good book. Like, even as an adult, I loved it so much, and I would highly recommend picking it up. It was funny at times, it was heartwarming at times, it was relatable and just kind of hit you in the guts at times, but I definitely recommend this one. I love Raina Telgemeier's illustrations as well. They are always really great. I also love another book by her that I'm about to talk about. But yes, this one was 5 stars. And so was Ghosts. Like I said, also by Raina Telgemeier. This is one of my absolute favorite graphic novels. And the back of the book says, there's something different about this town. Katrina and her family are moving to the coast of Northern California because her little sister Maya is sick. Kat isn't happy about leaving her friends for Bahia de la Luna, but Maya has cystic fibrosis and will benefit from the cool, salty air that blows in from the sea. So the girls are moving because, like I said, the main character, her little sister, has cystic fibrosis, and so they're moving because their dad gets a better job to pay for just kind of like the medical expenses from her sister being sick. And Katrina has kind of forfeit some friendships and just kind of lived her life for her sister because her sister's been sick. She's tried to be the best big sister she can be. They're moving to this new place, and they start to learn about Dia de los Muertos, which is a huge part of their heritage that they did not know about before. So there is Hispanic representation here as well, which I love. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I adore stories that have to do with Dia de los Muertos. I don't celebrate it myself, but I've always thought that the holiday was so sentimental, so sweet, and just incredible. I love, if you've ever seen Coco but you haven't seen The Book of Life, I would recommend you watch The Book of Life, the movie, because first of all, it came before Coco, and I just have this inkling that somebody stole some ideas there, but both of those movies are great. The Book of Life is the best though. And so anything that has to do with Dia de los Muertos, I think is absolutely incredible. Again, Raina Telgemeier's illustrations and stories are just absolutely fantastic. I loved this story so much, and yeah, it's just great. It has culture, it has ghosts, it has cystic fibrosis representation. It's just got all the good things. So definitely recommend picking this one up. It would be good for spooky season as well, but I feel like any time of year, this is a great read. I won't take too long to talk about these next ones because you guys know that I love this graphic novel. It's my favorite graphic novel of all time, and now there's a second book. So we have The OK Witch and The OK Witch and the Hungry Shadow. These are both by Emma Steinkellner, and they are fantastic. I highly recommend picking this up if you have not already. The art style in and of itself is one of the most beautiful that I have seen, as well as the story. This follows 13-year-old Moth Hush, and she loves everything witchy. But she's about to discover that witches aren't just the stuff of movies, books, and spooky stories. So she always gets made fun of in school because she's different, because she likes witchy things. And she comes to find out that she is actually a part of a lineage of witches, and that there is some history to this town she lives in, with the mayor and her family, and just some different feuds that go back generations. This reminded me so much of things like the Salem witch trials, as well as kind of a little bit of a Halloween Town element to it. So I definitely think you should pick this one up. I recommend this to everybody. It's so good. It's got culture, it's got representation, it's got witchy fall vibes, it's got all the things that I love. It's funny, it's weird, it's wonderful. It's just, oh my goodness, please pick this book up. I also really love the second book in the series as well. I think the first is still my favorite, but I'm so excited to see more. I hope that Emma Steinkellner is not done with this, because the OK Witch and Moth, and like, oh, there's a talking cat, Laszlo. He's awesome too. I mean, like, you just can't get better than these. So I highly recommend these. They're 5-star reads, my favorite graphic novels. So definitely check these out. Then I have one that I don't think I've really talked about much on my channel. It's not a favorite, but it's one that I think is really interesting and one that I hope to share with my kids someday. I think they would probably enjoy it. So this is Odd and the Frost Giants by Neil Gaiman, and this is illustrated by Chris Riddell. You guys know that I love when these two get together because the stories and the illustrations are just so good. So this one is good for if you like kind of mythology type stories. In a village in ancient Norway lives a boy named Odd, and he's had some very bad luck. His father perished in a Viking expedition. A tree fell on and shattered his leg, and the endless freezing winter is making villagers dangerously grumpy. Now Odd is forced on a stranger journey than he had imagined, a journey to save Asgard, a city of the gods, from the frost giants who have invaded it. It's going to take a very special kind of 12-year-old boy to outwit the frost giants, restore peace to the city of the gods, and end the long winter. Someone cheerful and infuriating and clever, someone just like Odd. So definitely think if you like, I think that's like Norse mythology is what it is, and you love illustrations and Neil Gaiman and Chris Riddell, definitely check this one out. I'm just showing you guys a little peek. There's Odd. Oh my gosh, is he not adorable? Look at his little braid. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. This was a really quick read. I highly recommend it. Like I said, if you are a person who loves mythology, it is a pretty simple story, but I think it's one that you would enjoy. I believe I rated it about 3.5 stars. So like I said, not a favorite, but one that I would reread and share with my kids someday. Now we are moving on to the graphic novels that I don't own. So the first one is Treasure in the Lake by Jason Pammett. I read this one around fall time last year as well, and I thought it was so cool. It's kind of like this adventure story. There's a lost village. It follows this girl. She's 13 years old and her name is Iris. And Iris just is a big dreamer. She wants to explore the world. She wants to move out of her town. She is just like ready to go. She feels like life is boring, and like I said, she's a dreamer. If you know, you know. She has a best friend named Sam who is trying to basically convince her like to stay, don't leave me, you're my best friend. They end up going on this adventure and find this city that was covered in water. Like they go out and they find treasures all the time. And Iris ends up finding something that leads them to this city that was buried underwater. And there's just so much history with it. It's so cool. Like there's a friendship. It's very vintage feeling, so I love that aspect as well. It's also said to be good for fans of Hilda, which I've read a couple of Hilda books and I've seen a little bit of the show, but yeah, if you like Hilda, I definitely think this would be a good one for you as well. What I loved about this is at the end, it actually talks about some real life lost cities, and I think that's really cool. It tells you a little bit about each one, shows some pictures and tells where they're located. So I think that's a really cool aspect of the story as well. I gave this one 4 stars, and yeah, I hope that this author comes out with more books like this because I think it's a really interesting concept. Now we're going to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender. I feel like Avatar is something that I have slept on for years. It was on TV when I was a child, but I just really didn't care about it, and I didn't know there were graphic novels. And once I binged the TV series last year, along with The Legend of Korra, which, let's just be honest, is not comparable to Avatar: The Last Airbender. We're just going to pretend like that doesn't exist because it's just not comparable. But Avatar was like my obsession of last year, and so I read a lot of the graphic novels, and 3 that I really enjoyed were The Promise, The Search, and The Rift. The Search being my favorite of the 3. But The Promise follows Aang and Zuko, and they are like on the brink of another war, and this follows kind of like after the TV show, so if you haven't seen the shows, you definitely want to watch those first and then kind of go follow along with these graphic novels. I was definitely hesitant about checking these out because I was like, it's not going to be as good. But oh my goodness, if you love Avatar and you haven't read these, you absolutely need to. So it follows this promise that Zuko makes Aang make to him, and Aang's decision to uphold that promise or not. It's really good. It wasn't my favorite. There's like, the promise was kind of, the concept I understand, but I didn't really love it as much, but I still really enjoyed it. And I read the version of these that have like the footnotes, which explains like the connections with the show or the artwork and just explains different things. I don't know. It was just great. I highly recommend consuming it that way. Then I read The Search, which was my favorite because it follows the story of Zuko and his mom, and they go off to try to figure out like what happened to Zuko's mom. And I loved that story. I mean, I had all kinds of feelings. I think it's probably one of the best graphic novels that I've ever read. And if, like I said, if you're a big Avatar fan and you haven't read The Search, at least read The Search. It's so, so good. I'm not going to go into detail about any of these because it's kind of hard to explain without giving spoilers from the show. But yeah, I read that one. And then the last one was The Rift. And The Rift is kind of more focused on Toph, but you also have, like, Aang is trying to kind of like restart this traditional air nomad holiday, and they go to this sacred place to perform this ritual, and there's now like this refinery factory thing built on top. So of course some god or somebody is going to be mad about all of this because it's a sacred land, and so that's kind of the basis of that story. But anyways, these 3 books really take off and follow where the series left off, and I think they're fantastic. Like I said, great for Avatar fans. If you haven't seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, I highly recommend it, especially if you like, I don't know, fantasy and just like elemental type stuff. I just think it's so cool. I never thought it would be something that I would enjoy, but I absolutely loved it, and these graphic novels were all 5 stars, but The Search was definitely the best. Next, we have the 5 World series by Mark Siegel. The newest, and I believe the last book in the series, is coming out pretty soon, and I'm so excited about it. I probably need to reread the other 4, but we'll see. Basically, this is like Star Wars meets Avatar, which to me, it's like the Avatar aspect that really gets me because I'm not as big of a fan of Star Wars, but the Avatar elements are definitely there because you've got these different people that have different elemental abilities, so that's a really cool aspect of it. There are 5 worlds, and they're all on the brink of extinction, and so of course somebody's got to save the day. And you have this unlikely hero. Her name is Una Lee, and she is part of like the Sand Society. I don't remember what they're called, but she's a sand dancer. And then you have this like star athlete named Jax Amboy. And then you have Ansu, I'm not really sure how you pronounce his name, but he's kind of like a poor boy from the slums. And they team up together to try to light the 5 beacons to save the 5 worlds. But of course there is some uprise, and there's people that don't believe that this needs to be done. They don't really believe, like it gets kind of political, but not too political, because I don't like too political books. But this is so good, and I definitely cannot wait for the new book. So far, I believe all the books have been 5 stars. Like the series is definitely 5 stars, but if you like kind of like the Avatar feel in space kind of, definitely check these out. Okay, I've got 3 more books. So next is Bear by Ben Queen. And oh my goodness, if you want a book to get you in your feels and you love animals, read this book. So it's about this dog named Bear. And Bear is a guide dog to Patrick, who is blind. And oh my gosh, it just makes my heart hurt to even think about the story. But something happens where Bear starts to go blind, and he kind of loses his sense of purpose in life because he has been guiding Patrick, and he feels like it's his job to keep Patrick safe, but now he can't see. So Bear runs away, and he goes on this incredible journey to kind of self-discovery and realizing that he has other senses that he can use to protect Patrick, and that his purpose in life is far beyond what he can see. And I'm getting chill bumps just talking about the story. I definitely cried. I think it was so good, and I love it so much. It was a 5-star read. I want to own it. I want to read it again. It's so, so good. If you're an animal lover and you love a good heartfelt story that might make you cry, definitely pick up Bear. Then we have another series, which is Space Boy by Stephen McCraney. This is a sci-fi that the first book definitely reminded me of Xenon. If you're a fan of like the old Disney Channel original movie, Xenon Girl of the 21st Century, it definitely gave me Xenon vibes, but it kind of branches off from there. It's very like new techie, futuristic techie type stuff. And I think it's really cool. It's about this girl who lives in space, and then she moves to Earth, Xenon, right? And she kind of like associates people with their scents, or like everybody is kind of like a scent to her. Like her dad reminds her of hot chocolate or something like that. I think it's scents. I can't remember. It's a weird thing, but yeah, it's a really cool concept. She comes to like find Space Boy in her school, and nobody really recognizes him. He kind of goes under the radar, and she realizes that it's not scents, it's flavors. She realizes that he doesn't have a flavor, and so she's trying to figure him out, and it just kind of goes from there. Do I think the series is perfect? No. There is definitely like the fat rep is not great. So know that going into it, if that's a trigger for you. I just think that it's a little bit insensitive at times, but overall, I think the series is really good. It's a very quick read. It's not something that takes a lot of thought to process it. It's very short and you can fly through it, but I love the series. I've read, I think, the first 7 or 8 books, and they're still coming out with more. This is a great series that I really enjoyed. And lastly, I'm ending off with a book that I read last fall as well, and it is called The Sleepover by Michael Regina. This is kind of compared to Stranger Things, but I would not compare it to Stranger Things. I would just say if you like creepy books, this is a great one to check out. It's about this boy who he and his sister and his mom have this babysitter or nanny, and the nanny passes away and the boy is dealing with grief, and all of his friends decide to come together to try to have a sleepover to take his mind off of it and help him get through his grief process. But they hired this new nanny that all the boys think, oh my goodness, this nanny is a monster. And it goes back to like some local legend around where they live and why they think this nanny's a monster, why they think she is associated with these local legends in these woods that surround the house. And it is so creepy and so good. I definitely think if you do like Stranger Things, you would like this, but any kind of like creepy, spooky, like just dark, ominous story, I think it's really good. So definitely check out The Sleepover if you think that you would enjoy something more creepy, but I will say that the exploration of grief in this is done really well also. And I realized that I read a lot more books last year that dealt with grief, and I think that's something I want to read a lot more of in the future because I love the topic. It is very hard hitting and it's hard to read at times, but I thought this was done really well, and I gave it, I believe, like, I don't know if I gave it 4 or 5 stars, but either way, it's probably like a 4.5 if it's not a 5. Okay, y'all, that is all of the middle grade graphic novel recommendations that I have for you today. I hope that you heard about some new ones that you can check out. If you've read any of these, let me know down in the comments which ones you've read and enjoyed, and if you haven't read one, let me know down in the comments which one has piqued your interest the most. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to get notifications for every time I post a new video. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.